It's become pretty evident that every additional piece of MCU content that we get just adds further confusion to the bigger overarching concepts and ideas that the MCU is going for. This time, we are going to talk about all the confusion in relation to the multiverse and how the spells affect it. So yeah, we're going to get into some of the confusion here. When WandaVision released, we all figured we kind of understood what concept and ideas they were going to put behind their version of the multiverse. Then of course Loki came in and it changed everything in terms of what we understood when they revealed Kang and the Sacred Timeline. This was further made confusing, and even more confusing I would say than anything before, with Spider-Man No Way Home and what happens in that film, specifically using Doctor Strange's spell. And to make matters worse, the recently released Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness just further adds more confusion onto everything. And this honestly hasn't been made any easier by anybody involved with anything having to do with any of these projects, because sometimes the same people have contradicted themselves or said something that contradicts something else or somebody else, and we're all kind of just left confused, if you will. Well, recently, Marvel Studios producer Richie Palmer sat down with Marvel to discuss the multiverse and how everything happens and what is going on. And the best way that he can explain the confusion and everything is going to Spider-Man No Way Home and what happens there. And he says that if you look at that spell that was cast, that thing right there is important, because had Sylvie and Loki not done what they did with the Sacred Timeline, we would not be able to see all of those different villains and heroes from the multiverse appear. But because of that fracture, because of what they did, because of the splitting timelines and all the things going on, that when he cast the spell, it got out of control. Had Kang still been in order, everything would have been pruned, so we never would have seen that much of an impact. The spell would have worked, but we wouldn't have seen the rest of it. But because they were removed, they weren't an equation anymore, and there was nothing to stop the split branching timelines, things could get out of hand, and they did. And he also reveals that this is exactly what leads to Doctor Strange 2. So in a way, if you watch them all sequentially, it kind of makes sense, because one project after another just adds more depth in how things are unraveling behind the scenes. So this honestly sounds pretty good and self-explanatory in terms of simplicity, and how one thing leads to another, which leads to another worse event, which leads to another worse event. And I do kind of appreciate that he was able to streamline it for everybody and just say, hey, look, you have one thing to happen, and it's only able to get bad as it was, or as big as it is, or was, because of these things. So it kind of quantifies everything, and again, reconfirms, to me at least, that Kang is the big bad and responsible for everything.